Of course, fellowship produces fruit as well. It's active. It's these verbs and adverbs that we mentioned earlier on in part 1. It generates movement. In James chapter 2, verse 14 to 18, that quite well-known passage of faith and deeds coexisting together. James says in verse 18, "Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds." As we follow in the footsteps of Jesus during these COVID-19 days, Jesus' model of fellowship from the beach shows us 3 things. Firstly, Jesus' fellowship produces actions through his words. When Jesus addresses Peter, he takes him on a series of questions. He's repeating the moments of Good Friday to show Peter how deeply he cares for his restoration. This is a verbal reality. When it comes to faith, what words are we using to reflect Jesus' attitude to our neighbours or our contacts on social media, email, telephone, however we're in touch with others? Some people are anxious because they're trying to make sense of these realities for the first time in their lives. They've maybe never stopped to think about their spirituality. Maybe they've never stopped to think about even their mortality. What can we do? How can we use our words to help them? In his recently released book, Storybearer, Phil Knox encourages this sense of listening, the sense of actively listening to the story of another, so that we can, at the right moment, not frequently necessarily, not all the time, cutting them off, but at the right moment go, "Can I tell you a little something about a story that I know?" And relay something of God's story to them. Or maybe, "Actually, can I tell you something about my story? Because I don't think what you've just said is actually represents the full truth. I think there's more. And let me tell you how Jesus has brought that more into my life." We need to be listening closely and specifically to what people are saying. Can we assist the Holy Spirit in offering a fellowship of restoration through our words to others? Social distancing measures are everywhere, but actually, we can speak. We can still communicate with those around us in different ways. However it works for your situation. Allow me to encourage you to listen proactively this week as you are hearing, and pray in response to those things, that God might open up a doorway, an avenue for you to speak. But of course, part of this witness also comes through us as a fellowship, responding to one another, loving one another, being willing to share with one another, lovingly and at times truthfully, in order to set straight even what may have been broken. Anything that has damaged or tarnished our sense of being wholly loved by Jesus needs restoring, and our words can move us in that direction. Secondly, as we've already seen, Jesus' fellowship produces actions. A barbecue, creating a space to bless one another. Being proactive while remaining safe. We can't do table fellowship in quite the same way, but maybe you could still have dinner with a FaceTime conversation with some friends. I heard of someone recently who did basically just that. And 3.5 hours later, they realized they all should probably go to bed. They had a whale of a time. Simple things. Even if it's maybe even a telephone at the table. Could you ring someone whilst you're having dinner and have a conversation? Table fellowship matters. What about using the platforms we have to create space for others to simply be, so that the Holy Spirit can work? I've often heard stories of people, even millennials even, saying that they want to leave the church. And the biggest thing that I seem to hear time and again is they've not found space to articulate what they're thinking or talk about what they feel they need to talk about. How can we create space? Through our actions, but as we also heard a moment ago, through our words as well. Fellowship starts in faith. knowing that we are loved, and it releases restoration in us towards others. And it moves us to action. In these COVID-19 days, the principles still apply. But what does it mean for you and for your household? There's no one-size-fits-all answer. So fellowship, then, is community plus. It's the big, bolstered, beefed up community option for us as believers. It's not a gathering simply of like-minded people with similar interests. Fellowship takes all sorts. Anyone who has said yes to Jesus, warts and all, plasters, bandages, plaster casts, heart surgery, whatever it is, wherever you feel life is at today, Jesus invites you to turn towards him and to experience his fellowship. If it's for the first time, that's wonderful news. May you know the love and the fellowship of Jesus. May he heal you. May he bind up your brokennesses. And may he restore you as his fellowship can. As a continuing Christian, fantastic. May you go around the spiral again and again and again of being loved by Jesus, being restored in another way by him, going on to produce fruit for him, to find that you're being loved by him in order to be healed and restored of anything that may have happened, to go and produce fruit for him. This fellowship is a potent and dynamic reality for us as believers. COVID-19 is not a destroyer of fellowship. We must never get confused between social distancing and the use of media platforms and the reality of fellowship with Christ. If COVID-19 could stop fellowship, it would mean that Jesus has somehow had to extract himself. It's just nonsense. It's impossible. Jesus can never leave nor forsake those who love him and believe in him. Let's keep up the connections. Let's bless those who spring to mind and rejoice in the gift we have of fellowship. And may we remember too that those that do not fellowship, fellowship is community plus. And Jesus welcomes everyone who will say yes to him to join in his fellowship. Amen.